welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this thought-provoking webinar. We're talking about exit planning strategies for your business with Gina Miller. I'm Terri Munro. I'm a partner and a wealth advisor here at Waverly Advisors in Atlanta, and I'll be your host today. So before we get started, just a quick reminder, if you've got any questions during the presentation, just drop them in the chat box. And Robin and I will be monitoring that, and we can read those questions out when it's time for Gina to take those at the end. So let's dive in. So it's really my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. She is my esteemed colleague and friend of over 11 years, Gina Miller. Gina is a partner at Bennett Thrasher's Disputes, Valuation, and Forensics practice. She holds the Certified Exit Planning Advisor designation, and she's got more than 20 years of experience consulting on valuation of equity interests in closely held companies. So as advisors, I know we've got a lot of Waverly folks on here as well as some outside contacts. So we often are the ones that are having the first conversations with our business owner clients who are thinking about the next step. And exit planning advisors like Gina can help clients evaluate what are the most critical questions about the future of their businesses. So things like, how do you even determine the true value of your business? How do I increase that value? And perhaps most importantly, how do my family's personal retirement goals fit into all of this? So Gina's here to help us understand when and how to plan these transitions effectively. So I can't wait for you to hear her expertise and benefit from her wisdom. So without any more ado, please join me welcoming Gina.
Thank you, Terri. I appreciate it. Great introduction. I just want to jump right in this morning with a story about Kathleen's Bake Shop. Y'all may be familiar with this story. It is a true story. But what I want you to be aware of is kind of what her journey looked like. So Kathleen began baking cookies at age 11 to sell at her father's farm stand. At age 21, so she's still very young. At age 21, this is back in 1980, she rented her first bakery. And 3 years later, she bought her first bake shop and named her business Kathleen's Bake Shop. She worked tirelessly for years, as many of our business owners, friends do, 18-hour days, 6 days per week without ever taking a break. So almost 20 years in the business, she wanted to take some of her life back. So in 1999, Kathleen brought on her bookkeeper, her current bookkeeper, as a partner along with his brother. Now, the bookkeeper didn't have any money to buy into the business, and I don't think the brother did either. But she brought them both in as partners and gave them 1/3 interest in the bake shop each. So now there are 3 partners with 3 equal interest in the partnership. So obviously, she did not have a consultant or a professional that she leaned on to help her make this decision. I think we would have all advised her to do something else. Her 2 partners purchased a factory in Virginia. So she was up in New York. They purchased a factory in Virginia and effectively just shut her out of her own business. The new factory churned out bad cookies. They weren't paying their vendor bills, and a lot of tension arose, as you could imagine. Then those 2 partners fired Kathleen and tried to squeeze her out of the partnership. After much dispute, they ended up settling outside of court, and her partners actually won the name of her bake shop. So they got to keep Kathleen's Bake Shop as the name of their company. And Kathleen only walked away with the real property that she owned. She had been released from the lease, and $200,000 in debt. So like her cookies, she would have to start from scratch again. But now don't you worry, because there's going to be a happy ending, and we'll circle back to that later. I want to talk to you today about what an exit plan is, the benefit of exit planning, ways that we can talk to our clients about exit planning to both increase the value of the business and help those business owners really reach their goals. And that's really what it's all about. So keep Kathleen's story in mind. Maybe just, your own client's business. Think about that if you're one of the advisors here today. And we'll talk about exit planning and its importance. For the advisors out there, I suggest, if you have a notepad nearby, just, maybe write down the names of 1, 2, 3 of your business owner clients, their businesses, because as we go through, we're going to cover a lot of different topics today, but some may resonate with you that you want to go ahead and reach out to those clients. Business owners that are in attendance today, please feel free to just start jotting down things that you want to think about, maybe take back to the office with you. I've been working, as Terri said, in the exit planning arena for many years, and I did obtain my Certified Exit Planning and Advisor designation back in 2018. So I worked with a variety of clients in a variety of industries, and there are many commonalities as these business owners start to exit, plan for the exit, and then start to exit their businesses. And we've developed them into best practices. We've even learned from some failures. So most of my background is in business valuation, and oh gosh, now we're pushing 30 years. But that gives me a perspective of approaching exit planning in a growing of value perspective. So I want to accelerate the value so that business owners can get the most out of their businesses when they exit. So here you see this bridge. You may have seen this visual used before, but it really is 3 areas that we focus on in an exit plan. We are looking at the business goals so that we can increase the value of the business, personal goals, what is it that the business owner wants to do, and then financial goals. What are the financial goals that they need to meet in order to achieve this? So these 3 pillars serve as the foundation of the bridge, ensuring that it remains strong. So another thing that this does, besides just pointing out these 3 areas of goals and that they're each a separate pillar, but looking at them in conjunction with one another, it also can answer the question of when is the right time for an owner to exit their business. So, for example, if based upon your client's financial plan, they need to sell their business for $15 million in order to maintain their lifestyle, but we've already determined that the business value is only $10 million, they may not have other assets to cover that gap. So that gives us an indication that there's work to be done on the business to help increase the value so that we can meet their financial goals, and we can determine maybe the length of time that it would take. So maybe the idea in this situation is we're not going to sell the business today or in 6 months, but maybe we need a few years in order to improve the business and make it more marketable and therefore more valuable out in the market. So we would talk about how the value may be increased. Another reason for that business valuation up front is because some of these personal goals and financial goals won't be met until it is understood what that value is of the current value of the business. So the business, personal, and financial goals all go hand in hand. Let me just step back for a second here. So an exit plan is a business plan, it's a financial plan, and it's a personal plan, all rolled up into one exit plan, because each of those pillars are important in the exit plan. And it is a written document. We don't have a plan until it's written down. So what it's going to do, and we'll talk about all of this in detail, but it includes contingencies for illness, burnout, divorce, death, all that's rolled up in it. But it actually begins with the goals of the business owner, and they can be varied. And sometimes they're not even well-defined goals. And so oftentimes that is our first step as an advisor, is to determine what the business owner's goals are. These might include things like timing of exit, what their financial needs are, what their stakeholders might need. Stakeholders in an exit plan might include a spouse, business partner, other family members, employees. So I hear a lot from business owners that they do want to take care of their employees. And so that exit not only matters to the business owner themselves, but to that legacy company and those people that are going to be left with the company, ideally. So the purpose of this exit plan is to maximize the value of the business at the time of the exit, minimize taxes, and ensure that the owner is able to accomplish all of his or her goals in the process. So key members of an exit planning team. So this is a very important table here. And as part of an exit planning advisor, we look to make sure that these seats are filled. Now, the seats may change depending upon the client, but where do you see yourself here at the table? This cross-functional team is very important, and all of these advisors have a role to play in either the business, the personal, or the personal financial goals of the business owner. So my Certified Exit Planning Advisor designation is through an organization called the Exit Planning Institute. It's based in Ohio, but they frequently do owner readiness surveys. And so the one I pulled for today's discussion is National Owner Readiness Survey. I'm sorry. They also do them state by state, but since we're a broad range of attendees today, I want to take a look at the national one. And so it's about a year old. The important thing here is to just kind of understand that, this may not pertain to your current clients, but this may pertain to future clients. And so it's a good idea to kind of just get a pulse of the market. So over 1,100 business owners from across the U.S. were surveyed, and they represented all generations in each region of the country. So it's quite diverse. The first question that I wanted to bring to your attention was, which of the following best represents your current understanding of the value of your company? This was asked to a business owner. And these are the results here. And I'm actually a little surprised because I talk to business owners all the time about the value of their companies. And I would say that certainly more than half of the folks I talk to are either not sure what their business is worth or have not had it formally valued. And they may have a good idea. The valuation process is very important. And of course, we'll get into the details in just a little bit, but it brings a lot of information up to the owner that is useful going forward. So another question was asked, have the business owners in the last couple of years completed a formal pre-transition value enhancement due diligence project to de-risk the company and maximize its value before transfer? And these results make sense to me. 86% of the folks have not. And a lot of that is just they don't know what that next step is. And this would definitely be the next step after having your company valued. And then importantly, how focused is the business owner and its management team on growing the value of the business? So 50% of those surveyed said that they regularly measure and formally keep track of business value. Again, that number seems high to me. Whether key management is aware of the business value, if key management has objectives that are tied to the business value growth, that's an interesting one. We can talk about how that happens. Do they measure and track the value of intangible assets versus the tangible assets, right? So they all have financial statements and they can look at the value of the tangible assets, but it's the intangible assets that can really add value to your company. And we'll talk about some of those intangible assets and the various groups that those are categorized in. And then 10% say growing business value is not a primary goal. This is where our friends at Waverly Advisors can really lean in these two questions here. Do you need the income produced by the business to support your lifestyle? So you're right now thinking about your clients. A lot of times, very frequently, the business provides the most income to support. So that's the biggest asset on an individual's personal wealth balance sheets. And oftentimes that exiting the business requires, them to depend upon that value that is achieved from it. And then how much do they need versus wants? I've worked with a lot of clients with Terri, and she does a great job of financial planning. And I know that a needs versus wants is part of that financial planning. It's very important when you're talking about selling one of your largest assets. And again, it goes back to, is this the right time to sell? What can we do to increase that if you are relying upon that cash? Let's talk about the 5 stages of maturity. This is of the value maturity. So we have 5 stages here. The first is to determine the initial value of the business, right? So business is our asset. We need to understand what the value is. So conducting an annual business valuation helps determine what value factors to focus on to accelerate the value of the business. When we understand the value, we want to protect that value. To best protect the value of business, owners must consider ways to reduce the risk, and which we'll talk about in much more detail shortly. Even if you don't think that the business will be affected by what we call one of the 5 Ds, and this is death, disability, divorce, distress, and disagreement, without preparing for the worst, the value will be negatively impacted. So a business owner or a potential buyer will want to know how this business is being protected. The third stage is to build, and that's going to improve the value of the business. So 2 ways to build value: you can either increase the cash flow of the business, or you can improve the multiple, or you can do both. So the multiple that's applied to cash flow, sometimes revenue, depending on what the appropriate metric is a number assigned by the markets to value the tangible and the intangible value or intangible assets and their associated risks. So intangible assets that we'll talk about later are in 4 categories: human, structural, customer, and social capital. In stage 4, we're going to talk about the harvest. So after building the business value, then it's time to harvest the fruits of the business owner's labor. And there are numerous paths that a business owner can take. The owner might discover that after reviewing their options, they may not want to sell, or it's not the right time, or they might want to transfer business to a family member. There are lots of options, and we'll cover what some of those options are. And then the 5th stage, managing the wealth. So value is managed through the course of the business life cycle, but the most important time to do so is after exiting the business. And to achieve the most value, the assets resulting from the exit of the business and other personal assets have to be managed well. So we'll dive more deeply into each of these 5 stages. So this first one, identify. This is where we need to take stock in what we already have. Define the baseline measurement of value. Is this a company that's going to be valued based on its earnings? Or is it a company that's going to be its value be based on revenue metrics? We want to understand what drives the value through an assessment of the intangible assets. We call this a triggering event. This is the opportunity to take stock in what we have and kind of get an idea of where we want to go when we move forward. So here are some just rhetorical questions while you're thinking about those business owners that you've written down in your notes. Things that are very important for the business owner to consider when they're exiting or determining their exit plan. Have they completed a professional valuation and a personal and business assessment in the last year? Business value can change frequently, especially if they're working on the business and finding opportunities to grow the business. Do business owners know what they currently have? I mean, literally, knowledge is power here, and it's the power to know where they are and create a path to where they want to be. Do they and their core team understand how a business is valued and what drives that value? Do they have a comprehensive understanding of personal, financial, and business value factors? This is where their focus should be to have the greatest impact on increasing business value and preparing for an exit. Have they created a prioritized, focused action plan around those value factors? So we've identified the value factors. Now, is there a plan in place to enhance those value factors to improve the value of your business? Is there management and family in line with their vision and plans? So this is very important. You want the stakeholders there to support the exit plan itself. So have they discussed their valuation with their partners, with their loved ones, and with their advisory team? I always suggest that the advisory team be formed early in the process. We want to make sure that each business owner has the right people on the team or around that table that we looked at previously. So the second stage, protect. Once we've identified the risks that are associated with the business valuation process that we do in stage 1, in stage 2, we want to protect that asset, the business value asset, by de-risking the company. And so here are some risks that, sorry about that. Here are some risks that need to be considered. So from a personal standpoint, there are, we can call them the 5 Ds. These are listed a little differently here. But a divorce could lead to dissolving their business. If they and their ex are in business together, the negative impact on the business could be widespread. Without proper legal documents, a divorce could impact not only their personal life, but their business value as well. Disagreement with a business partner could lead to a creative solution up to a business problem, or could cause the business to crumble. Conflicts may arise from differences in leadership styles, financial strategy, communication style. Side note, as a leader of our valuation group here at Bennett Thrasher, I do a lot of valuations for partner disputes and buyouts. It happens regularly. Unfortunately, disability and illnesses are part of life. So is the business owner aware of how an illness or a disability or other medical concerns could impact their business value? Without proper plans, a sudden medical emergency could cause the business value to plummet. The death of an owner can have a significant impact, as you can imagine. After an owner's death, there's a loss of important skills and expertise that are critical to the organization's success. This can ultimately lead to a decline in revenue and profitability and overall value. So ways to protect, so say in the death of an owner. I mean, obviously that's a risk, but a way to protect it is to document all the processes of the company, really taking that information that the business owner has in her or her head and getting it down on paper so that you know, the business doesn't, misstep after the death of an owner. Those are the types of things we're thinking about here. Um, under business, we may be looking at customers. We want to know if there's a lot of customer risk because of concentration. If there is, how can we de-risk that particular issue? Maybe we can put those customers under contract. That certainly gives a business owner or a potential buyer more comfort in buying a business if those customers are under contract. So we go through a variety of these issues. So a few more rhetorical questions for y'all. Have your business owners integrated risk management into their management model? Do they take risks seriously enough? How much are they willing to risk in order to grow? So some of the things we would like to see is that all of our business owners have a diversification of investments. I know I don't need to tell Waverly Advisors that. That there are contracts and agreements, that there are insurance plans, there's an estate plan. We want to make sure that their assets are protected from creditors, divorcing spouses. So a lot of de-risking can happen here in stage 2. In stage 3, we're going to build the value of the business. So we do that by increasing cash flow and improving multiples. Specifically, we wanted to take a look at the company's intangible assets. And so here we're calling them the 4 C's, and those are the 4 categories I mentioned earlier. So human capital is the value of the talent that they have in the company. So if they have a strong mixture of talent, experience, resilience, and motivation in their team, the value of the company increases. All things being equal, the stronger their human capital, the more value the market's going to place on the company. Strong companies believe accountability to each other is more important than to their boss or company. You may have heard this as getting the right people on the bus and getting them in the right seats. So that is the human capital intangible asset. Customer capital is the measure of the strength of the relationships with your best customers. So are they deep, integrated, tenured relationships? Is there recurring revenue, contractual relationships, which we just mentioned, a diversified customer base? All these things contribute to very strong customer capital. And so the best-in-class companies regularly analyze profitability by customer and product. Structural capital is the back-end infrastructure of the company, such as their processes, their financials, strategies, information technology, patents, and other intellectual property. It is the documented know-how. So we just talked about how to de-risk. There's a risk of an owner dying. What can we do to mitigate that risk? So it is the well-documented know-how and know what of the company that positions it to be fast and flexible. Structural capital connects people to knowledge, so it can be shared to enable their businesses to scale. And so documenting what's in the business owner's head ensures that the business is transferable. And then finally, social capital, or also known as the company culture. Social capital is what elevates the company to be best in class, as it is the optimization of the other 3 capitals. It's how they communicate, what they believe in, and how they operate internally and externally are key components of the company's culture. It's also shown in how their company contributes to its community. Stage 4 is the harvesting. So as it says here, there at some point a business owner will exit the business. they will exit. There is no other alternative. It says 50% chance it won't be on the business owner's timeline. So that's disturbing. So that's kind of why we go through this exit planning process. Let's talk about the exit options. So we break these down into two categories, both the inside options and the outside options of exiting your business. So inside might be passing the business on to children or grandchildren that are in the business. Could be a management buyout. You have key managers in place, you trust them, you know they're going to continue the business just the way the business owner wanted that business to continue on to be its legacy. Difficulty here with management buyout is that oftentimes the key managers don't have the funds in order to actually do the buyout. But it is an alternative. Sale to existing partners, I see this frequently. What I don't see frequently is that there's a buy-sell agreement in the operating documents. Wish there was always. Certainly that is something to do to mitigate risk. When we go back, when we were talking about various issues that come up. But a sale to existing partners, also an employee stock ownership plan, that has worked for some business owners that have exited. The company needs to be, significantly large enough with enough employees to make it worthwhile. It can be an expensive plan for the company to continue to pay for. The outside exit options, sale to a third party. Oftentimes, the sale to a third party can bring in the highest price for your business. That's usually because there could be some strategic value. If you're talking about a venture capital firm or, somebody who already has companies or has a platform for this company and is adding on, there'll be some synergies. If it's somebody who owns a business like this one, but it's in a different geographical area, then there may be some synergies. We like to see a sale to a third party where there's some synergies because they're a little more generous in the price. Recapitalize the company, initial public offering, orderly liquidation. So, and I've seen this sometimes, and it's kind of sad for me because often it happens when there hasn't been enough planning going into the exit itself, but could just sell off the assets of the company. Typically, this is the lowest amount of cash that you'll get for your business. And then we get to skipped ahead, we get to stage 5, and that is to manage. And this is what Waverly Advisors do so well. So there are lots of different areas to focus on the financial planning and the investment management side. And I would make sure that every exit planning business owner has a wealth management advisor to tackle these various components of managing their wealth. So let's explore value acceleration, the increasing value of the company with a game. So we're going to work through here. We're going to pop these up on the screen, and I'm just going to pause so that you can kind of think about the information that you're receiving about company A and company B, and if that helps you decide which business you'd rather invest in. Okay, so here we go. So company A is 20 million. Company B is a little smaller with 10 million in revenue. Company A has 2 million in earnings. Company B, 900,000 in earnings. Company A is looking at 5% growth, while company B is looking at just 2% growth. So do you know enough about the businesses yet to have an opinion? Let's go on and gather some more information. So here we have company A. The owner works in the business 50 hours a week. In company B, the owner works 50 hours a month. So if an owner works 50 hours per week in their business likely defines who the business is. And the owner probably is a little unbalanced between personal and professional life, may lack vision and purpose. An owner that has a balanced life and feels fulfilled doing their work is likely operating at their highest and best use while they're passionate about their daily work. And the owner probably has a defined personal purpose and vision for the future inside and outside the company. So we're indicating here that an owner that's working less in the company might have a more balanced perspective. Company A uses QuickBooks financials and Company B has audited financials. That might indicate what some of the risks are that the company's facing or that a potential buyer might want to be aware of. Company A has 20% of its customers equal 80% of the revenue. So a bit of concentration. Company B, there's no customer that has more than 5% of the revenue. And so less concentration. So here, the strength of the customer relationship is tied maybe to the owner and not with the brand. Customers are highly concentrated and have high likelihood of terminating their relationship if the owner's not involved. So there's a risk. On Company B, we believe that the customers are diverse and engaged and entangled with the company. In other words, they cannot possibly think of operating without the company involved. So strong customers. Customers are attracted to the brand that's been created and the belief in the people and the process. So really intertwined with the company. Company A doesn't own its brand. Company B, trademarks and patents it owns. So again, if the company is reliant on the owner, it's going to be tied to the owner, and there's going to be a big risk on selling the business. Company A, there's no succession plan in place for the various roles inside the company, but Company B has a deep management bench. There's no documentation of the know-how for Company A, but Company B has documented all of its procedures. Company A has loyal employees. Company B has gone a step further and offered phantom stock to their employees. And so pausing, now you might have an idea of which company might have a higher value. And hopefully you've said Company B based on these particular issues where the company has less risk and is more likely to be able to meet its future projections as far as growth and earnings. So I'm going to hit these slides a little quicker. I see we're getting on in time. Value acceleration it's based on risk and growth and the value of those intangible assets. So we talked about the various metrics multiplied by a multiple is equal to value. And so you can either increase revenue, cash flow, or some other metric to increase the value, or you can increase the multiple by de-risking the company, or you can do both. So here's an analysis of company strengths and weaknesses from a buyer's perspective. Again, when you're talking about exiting your business, that buyer's perspective is where you want to focus. And so just running through these quickly so that you can see these, what kind of issues are going on and how will these things affect value? and make this business attractive to a buyer. So when we're determining value, it's important to note that while there is a lot of information that can be gleaned from the historical results of the company, the value of the company is based on its future cash flows. So it's the future performance of the company that a buyer is most interested in. So we talk about, what is a multiple of revenue and how can we increase that? So say that, and again, value is in the eyes of the buyer. Say that there are a lot of risks, not sure if they're going to achieve their future revenue. Maybe the multiple for a company in this industry is 0.1 times revenue. But if we go in and de-risk it, we put some customers under contract, we deepen the management bench strength of the company, and all of a sudden we're increasing this multiple because from a buyer's perspective, it is more likely that those future revenues will be achieved. The same can be done with multiple of EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. How do we go from what we may be at the bottom of the range if we have a lot of risks at the company and grow that multiple? Multiple of book value, not often used, but could be used depending upon the type of company. So we've talked a little bit about risk already. It comes up a lot because that is definitely a focal point for us. But let's get into the value acceleration exit planning process so that you could talk to your business owners, or if you're a business owner out there today, we can talk about kind of what that process is. So this discover stage is the first stage. We talked about a triggering event that would create a business valuation, assess the personal and financial arenas for the business owner, and create a plan. So this is the time we look at the attractiveness and the readiness of the company, what the risks are. We look at it from a buyer's perspective, and we want to make sure we've got that right team assembled. So timing is important here. I've had a lot of clients come to me and they said that they would like to sell their company within the next 6 months. Well, maybe that's possible, but I think that what gets missed is the ability to accelerate the value of the company and really benefit them from that perspective, which is usually my perspective, but also make sure that their personal goals are being met and their personal financial goals. So you can see that it takes some time to prepare an exit plan and work that exit plan. And then once the business is ready, to get it into the sales process, and that can take some time. And then transitioning as well, business owner may be requested from the buyer to stay in the business a year or two. So we like to see business owners that have about 3 to 5 years of timeline left before they need to exit their company. The exit planning report that is prepared at this stage, this is a potential outline or table of contents. So first of all, again, I can't reiterate enough that it is important to have a written plan. So 80% of achieving a goal is writing it down. So this is going to be a list of personal, financial, businesses, strengths and weaknesses, correlated and used to justify present value and potential value for the company. And a prioritized action plan is created. There's also an additional benefit of having this analysis prepared, and that is that it can be used to educate the next generation and management about which key operations enhance the value. It can help measure performance for management team, and then also just foster learning about what value creation is. And it can be benchmarked annually as well. The second phase is the prepare phase. So this is the stage when you're thinking about buying your house, that this is the stage where you put on that new kick plate and fresh coat of paint, on everything. This usually is, 90-day workshops, actually tackling a lot of the issues. We're looking at de-risking the business. Now, at this time, the advisors are working with the company to help de-risk, while the business owner, what is he doing? He or she, they are working on running the business. So we really don't want the business owner to take their eye off the business. It's important. We had a business materials distributor that we were working with, and not only the owners were active in the business, but also key management each had equity interest in the business. And so when they thought there was going to be this big sale, they were doing everything possible to keep the sale, the momentum going, and providing all the documents. But they did take their eye off the business. And earnings started to drop. And what happened? They did eventually sell the business to the buyer, but there was about 1 year delay. So that in that time, they had to take that opportunity to show that they could actually grow the business. So it did create quite the delay. The last step really is the decide. Is it now time to exit the business? Or is it time to continue to grow the business? Or maybe your goals have changed. The business owner's goals have changed. Maybe now there's family interested in it because the business looks better. It's easier to get involved in. So a lot of different decisions are going on here, and possibly going back to continuing to prepare and grow the company. I want to show you just a quick case study of the value of this exit planning process. So we'll talk about Stan. He's been in the business for quite a few years, but he didn't have an exit plan or hadn't considered any of the other issues surrounding it. So at the initial meeting with him, we found out that revenue was $5.5 million and EBITDA was less than $1 million, and we determined a baseline value of almost $5.5 million. But Stan needed to do some things in order to maximize the value. We needed to get the owner out of the business, and so we had to develop a stronger management team. We had to grow the company, so increase the formal sales training, capture more market share. After 2 years of work, revenue increased from $5.5 million to $11 million, which is great. Cash flow increased, and they were able to sell the company to a foreign strategic buyer for about $15 million. So before it was $5.5 million, after $15 million, so value added about $9.6 million. So let's talk about the cost, because, well, other benefits was that they had saved money in taxes. But there is cost to an exit plan. The exit plan itself has a cost. The estate plan, where they were able to save some estate taxes. The financial plan, there's a cost to the valuation. So the total cost of the exit plan was $76,000. That resulted in an ROI of 151 to 1. So in this situation, it had a very, very good ROI. So that's the valuation, the value and acceleration and exit plan process. I just want to turn our attention back to Kathleen and her bakery. So as we said, Kathleen had to start from scratch. Kathleen started a new company, and it was named Tate's Bake Shop. Y'all may be familiar with that. Through the quality of her product and the support of her community, the bakery was propelled to success. When she started Tate's Bake Shop, Kathleen was 40 years old. She told herself that she would retire at age 55. And because Kathleen didn't want to make mistakes her second time around, she hired a business advisor to help her with her exit plan. In 2014, so about 10 years ago, Riverside Company purchased a majority share, about 80%, for $100 million. Oh my God. And in June 2018, Riverside sold Tate's for $500 million to Mandola's International. So we want our business owners to be like Kathleen the second time around. So I hope you have a page full of ideas to contemplate as your business owner or as a business owner or to discuss with your business owner clients. In our last few minutes, do y'all have any questions that I can entertain?
Well, we haven't gotten any questions in the chat so far, Gina, but I've got a question for you. So exit planning, kind of like retirement planning that we deal with, can be something that's easy to put off that conversation. But if the client's involved with a Waverly advisor, at least they are engaged in some future thinking. So how would you suggest, we kind of bring it up if it's become aware that the client hasn't really been thinking enough about it and how we could potentially add value?
When I receive an introduction to a client, and it is likely an exit planning client, I like to start with just questions. That's my favorite part of communication anyway. So I want to just ask, so what are your plans? And these are questions that you probably frequently ask your own clients anyway. But for me, somebody coming at me with a valuation need, what are your plans? Have you thought about retiring? What are your goals? And if they're not well defined, really pushing into understanding their timing, um, you know, asking questions just more around their personal situation to understand what they're really looking for, and then kind of helping them with a little dose of reality as far as you want to sell your business and you want to do it in 6 months. Well, let's talk about what that means. Can we do it? Probably, but do you know what you need from the business? Asking some of those questions, and then I quickly in that first meeting want to know if they have a wealth advisor, somebody who can look at if they've had their financial plan, their personal financial plan, looked at in the last year or so, if they know what it would mean to have all that cash from business and invest that cash. Do they have somebody to help them? I've asked them if they have an estate planning attorney, if they have a tax advisor, kind of every seat at that table. Want to know if they already have that relationship. And they start through all those questions and answers, they start to see the bigger picture of what needs to be what's entailed in an exit plan and the time that it can take.
Got it. We did have one question come in. Cindy's asked, just kind of, she had a particular question about an industry. Do you have any experience selling a solo practitioner concierge medical practice? And I know you've worked in a number of different industries, but can you talk a little bit about that area and what you're seeing?
Sure. We have done a lot of work in medical practices, especially as far as valuation for a variety of purposes. So medical practices, those are tough because those are personal services, right? And especially when it comes to concierge, you have a smaller group of, you have higher revenue, but a smaller group of patients. And so the thing about those patients, which we could refer to as customers, is you can't put them under contract. Even though they may be dealing with that doctor, you cannot tell a patient that you're going to sell your practice to Dr. Jones and they must go to Dr. Jones. And because it's such a personal experience for patients / customers, it's very difficult to assign a lot of value to those customers. And so, but each case is very different, and we would look at each case individually to see. Oftentimes, it's easier if it's not a solo practice. If there's a doctor's group, oftentimes somebody will want to stay with the group. They become comfortable with the group. And so those patients have more stickiness.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we're coming up on time here. If there's any other questions, pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we've got uh, Gina's contact information here. I just want to thank everybody for joining today. Thank you, Gina, so much for sharing what you do with us. I think it really aligns. For all of our guests, I hope you found it insightful. If you've got any clients you want to start a conversation with, or you just want more information, I know Gina has a lot of resources. You can also reach out to me and I can connect you guys. But thank you so much, Gina. It's been terrific. And thanks, guys, for your time.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.